Well, good morning. I was going to say good afternoon or whatever, whatever
Well,
it
it's afternoon
applies.
somewhere. I mean,
Welcome to Gruber Power. I'm Janie.
I'm Mark. Good morning.
And as you're all probably noticing, Nicole isn't with us today. She actually took today to spend some time with her family, so good for her. Hopefully she's watching and joining us later.
I hope so. I think she's spending
maybe
some
she'll
time with her
chime
son and hope we can hear from her.
Yeah. So anyways, what we've been doing and what we've been talking about is going through our Power website and discussing the different areas and aspects of our website and what we do, our services, our products. And within our website, we have a page that's dedicated to our licenses that we hold, thus the background that we see, all of our licenses.
Okay, sure.
Yeah. Those aren't ours, but they are an example of what we're discussing. So, Jesse, can you pull up the page so we can show what we are talking about and where to go to, please? And Mark is very good to have in this session or this podcast because you're very fluent or you're very knowledgeable about this discussion, about this area, and making sure that we have the proper licenses.
It's really important to have these, and we'll get a chance to talk about them. I know a little bit about a lot of these licenses.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you which ones are truly relevant to Gruber Power and which ones aren't, because there's some that aren't highly relevant to Gruber Power.
Right.
And why?
Right. Because us as a company, we're the Gruber companies, and we have several different divisions of our companies, and there's some overlapping that we have in correspondence with the licenses and things like that, right?
That's right. Up until, what is it, 3 years ago now, I guess.
Okay.
We had our project services division working here at Gruber.
Right.
And this was basically guys who did installation of low voltage communication products.
Okay. Right.
They piggybacked on the Gruber technical licenses, but they also had several of their own licenses that we got for them. And so we bundled all of the licenses for both divisions under one area. We're keeping them active.
Nice.
Even though both of those gentlemen have, one gentleman has moved and is working at the TSMC plant.
Right.
And doing the same job up there as a project manager. The other person is retired now.
Right. But that doesn't mean that we're not going to go there and expand in the future.
It's possible.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
okay.
It's possible.
So here's the page that we're talking about. If you go to the About Us tab or About tab and you click on that, then you can go down. The first one there is our licenses. Yeah.
And before we get into these licenses,
yeah,
why are they even important to have?
Exactly. I know. That's part of the conversation. Why do we need to have licenses? Well, obviously, there are federal and state mandates that require any business that's operating have licenses, to do business.
You have some of that. That's correct.
But go ahead and fill in some more about it.
Some of the licensing, it becomes the difference between a business that is kind of fly by night and a business that's trying to be legitimate and gain their customers' trust. So the top left license you see there, that federal tax ID number. Right. If you're in business, you have to have a federal tax ID number if you're going to pay employees. So that's our federal tax ID number that we use to pay our employees with. It tells people that we are a legitimate business. Okay. Similarly, the top right, Arizona sales tax license. Yes. Really, that's in Arizona, we call it a business transaction privilege tax license.
Okay.
And it's a license that tells everybody that we have the privilege to conduct transactions in the state of Arizona, and we are, as a result, able to buy product for resale and not pay sales tax ourselves on that product.
Okay.
And then when we resell the product is when we charge sales tax to our customers.
Okay, and so it's product-based.
Those are product-based.
Right.
Arizona happens to be a state that doesn't require labor or services to be taxed.
Okay.
We work in many states, though.
Right, I wanted to go into that a little bit.
And so some states where we do work, labor is taxable.
Okay.
And we have one state I can think of off the top of my head, New Mexico,
Right.
where labor is taxable and products generally are not.
Now, do we need to then carry two different license numbers, one for product and one for services, or does one?
One license
It
number
says-
covers everything.
Okay.
We typically need to carry licenses only in states for sales tax licenses where we have something called Nexus.
Okay.
Nexus is it's a fancy business term. It just means you do business here, and you do enough business here that you need to talk to the state and file taxes in that state.
Okay.
In most states, there's a couple different ways that you can get Nexus. If you have an employee in a state,
Okay.
okay, you have a presence in the state, which means you have Nexus. If you do more than $100,000 of business in most states, you have what is called economic nexus. Even though you might not have anybody that lives in that state, you don't have any offices in that state,
Right.
you do have enough economic activity that you've established a presence in the state that way.
Now, that includes, and when they establish that nexus, that's because we are shipping products to that state versus them buying products out of here.
Yes, it's that the products end up in the state, or if we're doing services, we're doing services at the customer location in the state.
That state. Okay.
So these licenses that we get, they're meant not only for legal purposes,
Sure.
they're meant to build trust. Some of the licenses that we're going to go over today are licenses that a state would not necessarily require you to have, but the states really want businesses to have.
Okay.
And customers want to see businesses have these licenses as well.
Right.
Because license equals reputation.
Legitimacy. Yeah.
Exactly. If you're a legitimate business contractor working in a state, you're going to go ahead and go through the hoops to get licensed as a contractor in that. And there are a number of businesses that we work with that see that on the customer side and say, yes, we're only going to work with people who have gone through the official process.
So let's talk about that.
Okay.
The process for licensing. Tell me a little bit about that and what it involves, along the lines. I understand you go online, you fill out a few forms, but what more is asked of us to essentially show our legitimacy?
Kind of depends on the type of license.
Okay.
For a business license or for a sales tax license,
right.
Basically all you have to do is show that you went to the federal government, got your employer identification number. That's what that federal tax ID number is.
Okay.
And say, yes, we're going to do business here, and give us a license so we can pay you.
Okay.
That's really what the government
Do they
wants.
do any kind of verification
For sales tax licenses?
or
Not
federal?
really.
No. Oh, okay. Interesting.
Contractor licenses, however, are a whole different deal.
Right, and that's what we have for towards the bottom there.
Contractor licenses across the bottom.
Right.
Typically, a contractor license is presented to a company, but there is at least one individual in that company that is the contract license holder.
Okay.
For us, that individual typically is Pete Gruber, owner of the business.
Okay, that makes sense.
And as time has gone on, the requirements to get contractor licenses have become more and more restrictive.
Okay.
When Pete picked up, for example, the commercial low voltage communication license,
right.
Pete is our license holder for that.
Okay.
At the time, it was go to the state of Arizona, tell them this is the business we're going into, and they'd issue you a license.
Okay.
Now, for many of these licenses, it's prove that you have worked in the industry for a certain number of years.
Oh, okay.
Prove that you're still actively working in the industry, and not as a manager, at a managerial level, that you are an actual tradesman working in the industry.
Okay.
Go through and take a test to test both your business and your functional knowledge in the industry, and pass the test.
Now, you mentioned that in order to get the contractor's license now, you need to prove that you have so much history establishing yourself in the industry already.
Yes.
But wouldn't you need to have that license then to actually establish it already? Or are they just talking about like in an apprenticeship role, something like that?
It's typically like an apprenticeship role.
Yeah.
For example, your low voltage communications license could be this way, where you
Okay.
have to go out
Uh,
and prove that you have worked in the low voltage communications industry for at least 4 years.
okay.
You can have worked for somebody else to get your experience
Okay.
in the industry,
Gotcha.
but
Right.
you've had to work in that industry for 4 years,
Okay.
that you have a basic business knowledge.
Okay.
So how to read a balance sheet, how to read an income statement, what it means to bill people and collect on those bills,
Okay.
and how to settle customer disputes. So general business stuff like that.
Sure. Sure.
Plus knowledge of, prove that you know how to do low voltage cabling,
You understand the product
that you
itself.
understand the product, what kind
That's
of
good.
problems you might encounter, and how you
Okay.
would solve those problems.
Interesting. Okay. That makes sense. That makes sense. Now, we'll keep going before we continue going too far down that track. I wanted to go into at the top here about the tax licenses.
Yeah, let's go into some of these specific licenses
Yes,
that we have.
because it's also showing and broke out that we have licenses for the individual cities locally in Arizona, like Chandler or even up north, Flagstaff, Mesa, etc. Why is it important that we have those individual tax licenses as well?
One of the things that you'll notice, while we do have a Phoenix tax license, we remit taxes to Phoenix through the state. A lot of states do this.
Yeah.
For the other cities, this actually harkened back to our project division days,
Okay.
where the guys would install product. Prior to, and I'm going to say about 2020, I think it was,
Okay.
if you were doing work in a city,
Mm-hmm.
the sales taxes that you paid had to be paid to the city where the work was done.
Okay.
So our project division focused in the Phoenix metropolitan area.
Right.
Notice, with the exception of Flagstaff there, in Tucson,
Yeah.
all of the other cities are in the Phoenix metro area, and that's where our guys mainly did work.
Right.
So what they would have to do is, if our guy was working in Surprise,
Mm-hmm.
he would have to go and get licensed in Surprise. We would pay a separate sales tax to Surprise for the work that he did that was
Okay.
taxable. Glendale or Peoria or Scottsdale, same type of thing. For
Okay.
Gruber Power Services, we actually don't have to worry about that.
That's exactly where I was going to go next. So thank you.
Yeah,
It was in that conversation. To differentiate between the type of work that you're speaking of, that where we need to have the tax licenses, versus the backup power units, whether or not we need a license to service the UPSs or not.
Yeah, these were mainly because of construction.
Okay.
The guys that we were doing with our project division were typically subcontractors working under a general contractor on new construction builds.
Okay.
Or they were subcontractors working for, say, the state of Arizona, doing moves, adds, changes of
Okay.
the low voltage cabling
Gotcha.
that were usually related to remodeling type construction. An office is being redesigned, and so they put cubicles different places. They have to have new drops, that type of thing.
Okay. Right. In the structure.
And the reason I said earlier that this was only true up to about 4 years ago or so is that the state of Arizona actually changed the law.
Oh, okay.
I'll give you a quick example like the state had given us.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say you own a landscaping company.
All right.
You have clients all over the Phoenix metro area.
Right.
Now, under the law that we had,
Oh, that would have been daunting.
absolutely.
Or these guys traveling around in their truck with their landscaping. I can only imagine.
It's a group of 4 guys that go around all over the valley. They're doing landscaping work, but they're
Right.
doing work and providing parts to people
Right.
all over the valley.
Right. So to have to track, okay, I was in this part of the valley versus
It
this.
was a
There's,
mess.
oh,
It was a
yeah, I could
mess
see that being a
because
nightmare.
because they'd have to have licenses in every city. They'd have to
Yeah.
file tax returns in every city,
Oh,
and it was an
geez.
administrative nightmare. So the
Right.
state changed the law so
Okay.
that uh, if again you're landscaping,
Right.
okay, if you're not doing new construction, um, you're doing remodeling
Maintenance.
or maintenance construction or something like
Right.
that.
Right.
So the way that the law has changed is, okay, I'm a landscaper, I do that now.
Mm-hmm.
I'll go ahead and pay sales tax for the irrigation parts at Home
Oh,
Depot,
okay.
and I won't
Right.
charge the sales tax to my client
Okay.
because I have now paid it and I don't have to be licensed in any of these cities.
Oh, interesting.
All I
Okay.
have to do is remit my sales tax to the state for the products that I do sell that I haven't paid sales tax on, and the state will take care of distributing
And
it
that
as needed.
establishes it. Okay. Interesting.
So that type of thing happened
Right.
and applied to our guys for their construction needs as well.
Oh, okay.
And as a result, we typically don't need to have those licenses, but we do keep them up. It's very low
Right.
cost for us to do so.
Right.
That gives us the chance or the choice in the future if we want to go back into that to be able to very easy.
So we have those options open to us. That
Yes.
makes perfect sense. Interesting. So, so the services that we do with our UPS units and things like that are not subject to any taxes like we would have been, or I was thinking like the contractors.
Well, yeah, good question actually.
Okay.
Our part of setting up a UPS system
Right.
does not involve construction.
Right. Right. It doesn't, because we're going out there doing the startup, but then we have,
We're selling
yeah.
exactly. We're selling equipment, installing equipment,
Right.
and doing a startup on that piece of equipment.
Right.
We're not changing ourselves any
The
of the structure
infrastructure.
or infrastructure around.
Okay.
We have electrical contractors that will do that, but they have the electrical contractors, high voltage electrical contractors license.
Which is why I know that we're very thorough in our screening of who we work with
Yes.
to ensure that they uphold the same kind of licensing and standards that we look for them to have, that we uphold on our end of it too.
Exactly.
Right.
And so that's why we're not in the construction, whether it's Arizona or anywhere else.
Right.
We don't have to have the construction contractor's license.
Okay.
Instead, we would have basically more of a general business contractor's license.
Okay. That makes sense. Very cool. So, Jesse, keep scrolling on our page here. There are some interesting ones that are coming up here.
Oh, there are definitely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's go through those shared contractor licenses
Okay.
just real quick. Some of
Absolutely.
these are very important for us, and some of
Yeah.
them are ones that we currently don't use, but we keep the license active.
Absolutely. Okay.
I'll top left,
Mm-hmm.
general commercial contractor. That's critical.
I see
for
that
us
one
to
a
have.
lot in general, just the ROC licensing. That's a pretty common one, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
The general commercial contractor's license, that B01 license,
Yes.
tells the world that we are registered as a contractor and we can do whatever work that they need to do on their UPSs or in their commercial buildings.
Okay. Okay.
And if they have a complaint, there is a formal mechanism to help protect the customers, and it gets back to us if it ever got.
Excellent that they have a method. That makes sense, because I know when anybody's having any work done, they always go through wanting to make sure they have the licensed contractors and things like that, that they're supported.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
The second one on that first row is the LO5 access floor license.
Yes.
That's one that we're not currently using.
Right.
Access flooring is typically raised tiles
Right.
that are made out of a combination of fiberglass and concrete, and
Mhm.
that are put into data centers or computer rooms. It allows the ability for things such as cooling or
Mhm.
low voltage or even high voltage electrical to just run right under the floor.
Right.
If you have a computer room, you probably have raised flooring in that
Right.
computer room
Yeah.
as part of that.
Now, I'm wondering, and this is off random thought here, when we talk about access flooring,
Uh-huh.
the data centers that we work within frequently, they're very secure sites. So
Yes.
not anybody can just like randomly walk through there. So I have not been inside of a data center, so to speak. And they've got equipment, I know, running rows and rows and rows
That's right.
of equipment running. Do they operate when they build those data centers with access floors? Do we know?
Typically, the access floor build out takes place before any of the computer equipment or
Right.
UPSs or AC systems
That's,
or anything are put in place.
but do they build them, I wonder, with the access floors?
A lot of times they do.
They
Yes.
do. Okay.
Yes, they do.
Interesting. Yeah.
That was one of the original businesses that
Yeah.
we got into back in 1984.
Oh, that's awesome.
When, the story goes when Pete was working for Digital Equipment,
Right.
he noticed with a lot of his customers
Mm-hmm.
that they would have problems with their hard drives. Now,
Mm-hmm.
these hard drives is the size of a small washing machine in many cases.
Oh,
They hold
wow.
upwards of a few hundred megabytes, but they were tens
Okay.
of thousands of dollars.
Right.
And they're super sensitive to things like dust
Okay.
because they're not sealed hard drives or Winchester style hard drives.
Okay.
Pete would go lift up the access floor panels
Uh-huh.
and would see that it's completely dusty and dirty and terrible down there.
Right.
So
Right.
that's one of the first things that he did as a side business
Oh,
would
wow.
be to go back to these
Mhm.
clients and say, "Hey, I was working on your deck equipment. I was working on your VAX or working on your
Yeah.
your mainframe, working
Uh-huh.
on your hard drives,
Right.
and here's the underlying reason why you're having these problems.
Is the-
The area under your floor is it's terrible. It's dirty.
Oh, okay.
Or I see that you
Right.
have repairs, or I see that." Well, he
Mhm.
had to have the access floor license to get in and do any of that stuff.
Ah, bingo.
So he got the access floor license, and that was
Because-
a big part of our business for a long time.
Okay, well, it just makes sense because we operate working in areas of synergy throughout
Yes.
the company. One area leads to another area to work and help the other division out. So yeah,
Yes,
that
and
totally makes sense.
That's how the access flooring got going. The reason
okay.
it ended up as Gruber Technical Services, because
Sure.
Gruber Industries, we're talking 1983, 1984 when this started, and
Right.
Gruber Power Services didn't start till 16 years later.
Right, right.
That business general contractor's
Uh-huh.
license was put under Gruber Power Services because we needed it to do the UPS install.
Oh,
You
okay.
also need the commercial general contractor's license to do the access floor work.
Okay.
So the guys that we had working in our project division at that time, we said, you know
Mhm.
what, since we're moving our contractors' licenses to Gruber Power Services
Right,
for this stuff, because
Mhm.
communication products doesn't really need those licenses,
right.
we're gonna put the guys under Gruber Technical, call them Gruber Technical Services, and move all the
The
licenses
licenses under
there.
that. Now, how long does a license last? Once you obtain it, is there just a process of renewing it on a yearly basis, or is it indefinite? What it is?
Great question, actually.
Yeah.
It is not indefinite,
Okay.
and it does depend on the license.
Okay.
But typically, the renewal here in Arizona, anyway,
Right.
happens about every 3 years or so.
Okay.
For the older holders of these licenses,
Right.
like we as a company have held these licenses for 20, 30 plus years in some cases.
Sure.
We're kind of grandfathered in as long as we
That's what I
go
was
through,
wondering.
that we do the renewal, we attest that the contract holder still works here, then
Right.
they're good and the license goes.
And is Pete the one that's holding the contractor's license for all of those? Or
Yes,
yeah.
he is actually.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah,
Very
he
cool.
is the license holder for the company
For all of those.
for all of those.
And being that they're grandfathered in, then he doesn't have to go through any new requirements or anything like that as well.
Correct. That's correct.
makes it
So
a
if
lot
we were
easier
to
for
drop
us.
the licenses and come back into them, they would be much more difficult to
More
do so.
stringent. Yeah.
Much more stringent.
Okay.
The next two license for commercial low voltage communications and
Mm-hmm.
residential low voltage communications
Right.
deal specifically with the project team that we had that did
Okay.
the category 5 and category 6 wiring in wall. Low
Right.
voltage means not more than 30, basically 30 watts or so coming
Right.
across the wire. A
Yeah.
110 volt wire is considered high voltage, so your typical electrical outlet would not qualify for low voltage.
Right. Right. That's how I've always.
So this is basically network cabling.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. Now, Arizona state contracts, the cabling services and the UPS maintenance. Tell me a little bit about those.
When you want to do business with the state of Arizona,
Uh-huh.
you don't just get to knock on the door and say, I'm here, I want to do business with you.
Okay.
They want to do a pre-qualification process. This,
Yeah.
we're going to get into this more as we get through states, because this is not common to Arizona. It's common.
Okay.
It's common across the U.S. and with other entities.
Okay.
So you have to get licensed to do business with the state of Arizona. You
Right.
go through a licensing and vetting process.
Mm-hmm.
And once you have gone through that licensing and vetting process, you will be issued a contract number.
Okay.
That contract number tells the state the types of services or products that you are going to be allowed to sell to them.
Okay.
So we've heard about this at the federal level.
Right.
It's the GSA.
Okay. Right.
That's
Yes, I'm very familiar with
that's
that.
the federal
Yeah.
equivalent is the Goods and Services Association, I think is what that stands for.
Okay.
Don't quote me on that, everybody.
Okay.
But that's for state contract. Again,
Mhm.
for cabling services, we're not really using that one right now, but
Yeah.
we have the ability to go into the state and do
Okay.
cabling services for them with that license. For UPS maintenance,
Mhm.
absolutely we use that.
Okay.
Not only at the state level, some of our largest customers are county level customers,
Right.
and they also require that state license because they're getting a lot of their funding from the state.
Okay. All right. Now, I'm thinking of the differences. I understand we need to get the tax ID number for tax purposes.
Right.
That's just for products sold to ensure that we're paying our taxes and that kind of thing. And then we need the contract licensing for the actual goods and services that we're doing. So that way, if there are any issues, customers are protected in that aspect.
That's right.
And that's where you need to have the difference between the two of them, right?
Having a contractor's license really helps protect all parties
Right.
when you're going to do work
Okay.
from fraud. For the contractor themselves, they're not going to be able to get that contractor's license if they're trying to just be a fly-by-night company that's going to come in, take people's money, and disappear.
Oh, yeah. You've heard about scams like that.
We've heard about scams like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And so for the consumer side, whether that consumer is a business or an individual,
hmm
that's the same type of thing. If you're working with somebody who has a contractor's license, there's a much higher chance that you're going to get good quality work up front.
Okay.
There's also recourse if you don't get good quality work. You can go to the state agency that licensed that business,
Right.
and you can report that to that state agency, and they can work with that business to resolve as an intermediary to resolve the issue that you're having.
Okay.
Worst case,
Right.
somebody with a contractor's license fly by night, there is, at least in some industries, a state fund where
hmm
consumers can get a refund of what they paid from the state.
Okay.
And then the state takes on the role of that consumer and either sues or goes after.
Reminds me of the FDIC on the banking industry.
Kind of.
Yeah.
That the state would either
Right.
sue the contractor or go after the contractor,
To try to
or
recover.
possibly even bring criminal charges against the contractor.
Okay.
The state becomes the aggrieved victim in this case instead of the
The
individual.
individual. Okay. That makes sense.
And that's a very strong way to protect individuals against the unsavory characters that you can find out there so often.
Right. Now, speaking of unsavory characters, we were just actually having a conversation about this, about how there are entities out there operating under the cover of working for different companies and things like that, that they try to reach out and get goods from us, products from us.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Fraudulently. I've noticed that as we've grown over the years and as our presence has been expanding over the years, that we get more frequently requests coming into us from companies that are illegitimate, that are not legit, and trying to sneak by, because we do provide our customers terms.
Right.
And we have a process for vetting them and providing our customers the ability to invoice them after the fact, and that companies will try to get through that process.
Yeah. In fact, the credit check process that we'll run for companies may include doing something as simple as checking their contractor licenses.
Oh, yeah.
If they are if they claim to be a service firm themselves, and we have a lot of companies that provide services to their clients, and so we are the vendor, they are the middleman, or in some cases we're the middleman, where we get something from your manufacturer, we resell to the vendor, they're doing it for their customer, and we can check their credit partly by checking their contractor license.
Very interesting. Now, we do go even further than that, because even just like we have our license numbers publicly put out here, and somebody could pick up our number and try to utilize it out there, claiming that they're us when they're not. So we definitely put in different aspects in our quality control and making sure that, that they are legitimate requests.
Oh, yes.
Whether we're calling them directly, screening everything properly,
Yeah, and for Arizona, you can go to the Registrar of Contractors, look up and verify licenses, and that's also a good thing for people to be able to do.
That makes sense. Now, help me understand when, if you can scroll back up just a bit, Jesse. Because one of the questions that I was thinking of while we were talking about this is that we have our Arizona State contract license, but then we also have our general commercial contractor license. And so the difference between the two is one, like, how are they regulated by different departments? Is that what it is?
The shared contractor license section is for the contractor's licenses that we would use working with anybody.
Okay.
The Arizona State contracts really are contract numbers that we have that are specifically assigned for us to be able to work with the state of Arizona.
Okay.
And that's it. If you're not the state of Arizona, you probably don't care about those numbers, except for if you're checking us out to see if we're a legitimate business. That adds legitimacy to who we are as a business, that you now know that we do work for the state of Arizona, and we've been issued a vendor contract number with them.
Okay, because I'm thinking of it in a customer's aspect. What is it that I want to look for a company to have when I'm having goods or services performed? What contract numbers or what licensing do I want them to have something done?
If I'm running my business,
the
Arizona State contracts don't make a whole lot of difference to me, except to help with legitimacy. It's those state contractor licenses that I'm looking for.
Okay. Gotcha. For the contractor licenses. Gotcha. Okay. Going down a little bit, Nevada licenses. So how come we point out Nevada licenses on our website a little bit more than we do other licenses, it looks like? Is it because of our presence there?
It's because of our presence there. Yep.
Yeah.
We're located in the Southwest.
Right.
Arizona, Nevada, California are really, and if you want to be specific, Southern Nevada / Las Vegas.
Right.
And Southern California. That's our region.
Right. Where we
That
perform a lot of
that's
services
where
within.
our sweet spot is, as it were.
Right.
At one point in our business, nearly half of Gruber Power Services business
Hmm.
came from the Las Vegas area.
Okay. So it made
There
sense
were a
to make
couple
sure.
years where we actually had an office in Las Vegas with people
Right.
operating out of there.
I remember hearing about that. Yeah.
So we do, and some of our largest clients
Operate out of there.
are based in Nevada, have
Hmm.
many locations in Nevada, and require that we hold the appropriate Nevada business licenses before they'll do business.
Okay. And then, so that takes me to, we do a lot of business all across the United States. We do a lot of services all across the United States. And we have, I understand, like we talked about, the Nexus, we have our tax licenses,
Yeah.
so that we are able to charge taxes appropriately. But as far as our licenses for performing the work that we do, is that covered on a federal scale, or how does that go about? Because I know, we'll fly out at a moment's notice to a customer site, no matter where they're at.
Yes.
If they're in Wyoming, we'll jump on a plane and go take care of them.
In many cases, the amount of business that we do in a state is so small that if we're going out ourselves, we do
Right.
not go out with a license to do work in that state.
Okay.
We haven't essentially established a nexus where we have a business reporting relationship in that state. Wyoming
Okay.
may be one of those.
Okay.
Much more common for us
Right.
is that we work with subcontractors and we partner with them. And the subcontractors we work
They
with
hold the license.
have licenses to do contracting in the states where we're asking them to do work.
Right. Because I am familiar with that's part of our process when we're working with subcontractors as far as the approval process goes, to ensure that they're vetted and they have licensing and things like
we
that.
want to make sure that if we don't have licensing to do work in a particular state,
that they do.
the people that we work with do.
Okay.
And we also typically we try to minimize the work that we do ourselves in states where we don't have explicit license.
Okay, gotcha.
We try to focus on the subcontractors doing the work in those states instead. Some states are a lot more loose than others when it comes to contract licensing, and it's not a federal level. Contract licensing is always managed either at a
by the
state or local level.
Okay. Well, they should have a federal level one.
It would be nice. I tell you, it would be a whole lot easier.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Yeah, like, why don't we?
Yeah.
Okay. So thinking about that, as we are acquiring new customers rapidly and our growth is marking different territories and different areas, we have a process internally of some really wonderful people in the company that help make it happen when we need to acquire, whether licenses and things like that. I know between yourself and some other individuals, you guys all work behind the scenes, like gathering up whatever it is that we need to make sure that we acquire what we need so we can do business there.
Oh, yes. Great shout out to my accounting team. And
Yes,
Laura, my
that's where I'm
controller, for
going
helping
with this.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. And in fact, we'll go into it a little more right here, going into the tribal vendor. Shout out to Linda as well.
Oh my gosh, yes.
She's such a valuable part in making sure that we are having and acquiring and keeping up with our gaming licenses, because that's a big industry that we work within.
It is.
Yeah.
The reason that you need to have tribal licenses
Yes.
goes back to the view that our government takes of Indian tribes and the reservations.
Okay.
Indian tribes are typically considered sovereign nations within the United States, and they are given the rights, many of the rights of fully sovereign nations, which includes the right to self-governance.
Okay. Right.
So that means when we want to go work with an Indian tribe, federal government isn't going to have jurisdiction.
They're stepping out.
So the Indian tribe does.
Right.
And the Indian tribes have their own process for vetting the companies that want to work with them.
and their own requirements
their own
and
requirements, and oh man,
and I know I've heard about it because I've worked with Linda several times when she's going through the process of our renewals
yeah,
and making sure that we have, the proper information, making sure that we're gathering, the information that she needs to keep up on it.
it's
And
typically an addition to type of licensing
right.
where the tribes will say, in addition to
Mm-hmm.
the contractor's license that you hold with the state where we're located, and
Okay.
in addition to the fact that you have your state sales tax license, we
Right.
also want to do our own vetting process,
Their own due diligence.
our
Sure.
own due diligence.
Right.
I mean, and it's very involved.
Yes.
They
I've
will
heard.
they will it's they will involve fingerprinting. They'll do a
Okay.
background check with fingerprints.
Okay.
It will involve a full financial disclosure.
Okay.
I have disclosed less information to banks to get a loan for my house than I have
Oh,
disclosed to the
wow.
Indian gaming
That says a
tribals
lot. That says a
for
whole
them
lot.
to do a background check. And the reason is they're
Okay.
doing background checks on everyone who might go to their location to do work. So all
For
of our field
security
engineers,
purposes.
to
Right.
everyone who's going to interact with their people. So all of the salespeople who potentially interact with them,
Okay.
to all of the principals of the company,
Okay. Yeah.
which is going to be Pete and myself typically.
Right. Right. Okay.
And the type of information, it's a very thorough background check, and it depends
Okay.
on the tribe.
Right.
Some are more anal than others.
For lack of a
Um,
better term.
I would
Right.
swear that some want to know what I ate 3 weeks ago.
Of course.
Um,
What your children's names are and
what my children's pet nicknames for me were, so they can
right.
go to and call my children and find out for sure.
Verify.
You know, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's a very involved process. The I think part of this
Okay.
stems from the fact that the Native American communities in the past have been so taken advantage of by people
Oh,
outside those
it's
communities,
unfortunate circumstances that led to where we're at.
and
Yeah.
the recourse that these communities have, they
Mhm.
have found out that their recourse is limited because
Because they're being a sovereign
they're
nation.
being a sovereign nation, and
Yeah.
other government entities will not step in and do things and provide the same protections that
Okay.
they will for people who are not on the reservation.
Interesting.
So
Okay.
they definitely do a very thorough due diligence. And
Right.
this is not just for UPS. This is for any contractor who is from outside
Anybody wanting to
that
do work.
particular Native American nation who wants to
Okay.
do work in that nation.
Okay.
For example,
Uh-huh.
when I ran my consulting company myself before I came to Gruber, this was in the early 2000s. I
Right.
was starting to do some work with the Colorado River Indian reservations. And
Okay.
there are a group of tribes.
All right.
And I was starting to have to go through that process personally in order to work with the tribes.
Okay.
And it was far
That
less
would have been
onerous
difficult.
then than now, but it was even onerous back then.
Right.
For me as an individual solo entrepreneur,
Right.
it was not particularly easy process to get through, but I managed to get through it, got myself a license, and started working with them. It's the same process that we're doing here, though.
Right now our website shows 1, 2, 3, 6, 7 on there. We actually at this time I gathered up at least 16 and growing
Yes.
licenses that we're carrying.
Oh, and
you know.
on top of that, one that I'm a little surprised we don't have listed up there is the Navajo Nation.
Right, that's huge.
The Navajo Nation
Yeah.
is probably the largest Indian tribe in Arizona.
Right.
They're the largest landmass area in Arizona.
Right.
And a lot of the other tribes will depend on the Navajo Nation's vetting of us.
Oh, okay. So if we've gone through their process, then they'll accept us into theirs.
If we get through the Navajo Nation
Right.
process, they'll accept us to fill out their application.
That's all. Oh, to approve to fill out theirs.
Yes, yes. That's
And then
kind of
that's
how
another whole.
and they'll do the whole thing all over
Oh,
again.
wow. So they want you to go through one first and then to get to theirs.
Yeah, the Navajo Nation.
Okay.
They're so in
Set
Arizona,
standard.
there's kind of a state level application to go with the Indian nations,
Right.
and the Navajo Nation is kind of that de facto state standard.
Right.
And then the other tribes in general,
Mm-hmm.
the larger the tribe, the more likely they are to depend on the Navajo Nation as their gateway.
Okay.
And so if you lose your Navajo Nation license, and they are
then you lose a lot with
then
that.
you lose a lot with a lot of the tribes, and they
Okay.
are one of the most restrictive of the licenses.
Okay. So
So
that makes sense. One of the things when I was listing out the licenses with the different tribes, I noticed that there's also a separation. You have for example, you have the regular tribal license that you have, and then there's also a separate gaming license that we
yes,
also have to hold. So it's like two different licenses within one tribe that you need to get
yes, and
to add complexity to it.
well, it is. It does
Yeah.
add complexity, and some of
Yeah.
those licenses, again, were for our project team.
Oh, okay. So that's why we needed to have the dual as well.
It's not unlike the contractor
Mm-hmm.
licenses that you get, where you get low voltage cabling, or you would get electrical, or you get general business, or you get residential.
Right.
The tribes will have their own licenses that are split into the type of service that you're going to do.
Okay. Similarly, that we were
So
discussing
yeah, you're looking
earlier.
at Gila River down here, and that's
Yeah.
absolutely that's one of them.
Okay, because I know I see it several times listed out in the different licenses that we are renewing with them. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, the business license, the gaming. Okay. Well, let's keep scrolling on here and see what else we have popping up here. Our
Federal licenses.
Yes. So that was kind of what I was touching upon earlier was doesn't the federal government, just watch over all the services and contractors overall,
They have a role, but it's not the contractor licenses typically are within the state.
Okay.
What we have here, that DUNS number is actually a Dun and Bradstreet number.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yep.
that's to work
Yep.
with the federal government, you need to have a Dun and Bradstreet number. That's not a question.
Sure.
To get onto the GSA
Mm-hmm.
schedule, you have to have a number, and you have to work and get licensed with the government as well.
Okay.
And that's where the cage code that you see, that 35BX6, comes in.
Okay.
Yeah, I know it's a little small for you probably.
I wear glasses for a distance. Yeah.
So let's just go down those real quick. We've got the DUNS number.
Thank
We've
you.
got the shared contract licenses. On the left,
Right.
you've got the FSC 61 category.
Mhm.
That's just kind of the categories where we can do work. It's
Right. Right. Exactly. Listing the type of products and the type of services. Yes, I'm familiar with going through those.
SIC is simply called the Standard Industry Code. SIC codes, incidentally, have been largely replaced with the more North American Industry Services Code,
Right.
the
Okay.
NAICS code.
Right.
So SIC codes, while they're out there, they're not as relevant and not as widely used as the NAICS codes nowadays.
Okay.
These NAICS codes you can look up online,
Yes.
and each code corresponds to a specific product that is a business sells or service that a business provides.
Right.
Every business, no matter how small, is designed to fall within one or more NAICS codes.
Right.
If a business is truly so unusual or generic that there would be no NAICS code,
Yeah.
then there's an NAICS code for other.
Well, it's funny you bring that up because, I often will work within multiple divisions of our Gruber companies, and our newest division, Gruber Motor Company, that I've assisted with, and finding electric vehicle under those codes was a challenge initially. Because
electric vehicle repair is a hard one, and
because that's new industry, new to the whole.
Exactly. That's one of the reasons. The more generic codes typically end in 9.
Okay.
So we've got that one code 335999. I can tell you right now that's a very generic code.
Okay.
In fact, it's probably a generic manufacturer's code.
Okay. So just you're a manufacturer.
You're some sort of manufacturer of some sort of product.
Okay.
It's going to be kind of a catch-all for manufacturing.
Okay.
But we've got those are good codes. So they will cover the fact that we have UPS installation services, that we work with technical or work with computer equipment, that we work with lead acid batteries, that we work in high voltage environments. Those cover a lot. That's what those codes describe.
We use a lot of these codes because a lot of the customers that we work with, all over the United States, some of them do have a registration process and approval process themselves.
Yes.
And part of the process is that when we're filling out, the vendor registrations and things like that, they will request these NAIC codes as well, so that they have an idea in their process what we do.
And while I don't know off the top of my head, I do know that at least that one of those numbers will be our primary code.
Okay.
With the communication division, same thing.
Oh, okay.
There's one NAICS code that is the primary code that we use, although there are several NAICS codes that could apply to our business.
Okay, just to cover the whole spectrum.
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. And then, of course, we have miscellaneous as well, just to have out there.
2 of those numbers on the miscellaneous are shrug your shoulders. You have them. Yeah. Arizona state unemployment, Nevada state unemployment. I would not be surprised, because it's been a little while since we've had workers in Nevada, that Nevada state unemployment might actually be inactive.
Oh, okay.
Those are very easy to activate or deactivate.
Right.
The 𝙤𝙀 mining safety.
That's one we're very proud of, right?
It is.
Yeah.
And that's actually very important to us. Our largest customer in Gruber Power Services is a mining company here in Arizona. It's one of the top 10 mining companies in the world.
Wow, that's impressive.
And so they are very serious about us having that 𝙤𝙀 certification. And
absolutely.
Typically, whoever goes to the mine to do work in the UPSs will have that certification, or they're not going to the mine.
Right. And that's something I know that we have to renew as well, ensuring the upkeep of it.
Yearly.
That's yearly. I remember that coming up.
And to give you a quick example of why you'd think a mine, they're digging in the ground. What are they doing? Safety. Well, the 𝙤𝙀 is for safety. Right. The reason they would use UPSs, though.
Oh, right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's the copper mine in central Arizona, east central Arizona.
Yeah.
They have a basically a fusion or a electrical furnace where they're taking ore that has already been enhanced. It's already been partially processed.
Okay.
And another part of the process is that this ore comes in through what effectively is a long tunnel.
They have a conveyor belt type system?
I don't even know that it's a conveyor belt as much as it is a big drum.
Oh, wow.
And the drum is, very large.
Okay.
I wouldn't be surprised if it's a 24-foot diameter drum that's 200 or 300 feet long.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
That is huge.
They'll dump copper ore into it.
Okay.
The drum running through electricity. It's using electricity to heat the ore.
Okay.
that ore is being heated to somewhere around 3,000 degrees,
Wow.
2 to 3,000 degrees.
Okay.
Enough for the copper metal to melt.
Okay. Inside that huge drum.
And eventually comes out the other side. Slag will come off come out of one area. Partly refined copper comes out of the other. What happens if the electricity goes out?
Okay, because they're using electrical power.
They're using electrical power to heat this.
Wow. That's
If the
on a
electricity
huge
goes
level.
out,
Right.
they've just lost maybe $6 or $7 million worth of ore, plus a piece of equipment that may be tens of millions of dollars.
Okay.
So even though it's in a
huge.
dirty environment,
yeah,
they're going to have not one, they're going to have 2 UPS systems.
so they have the redundancy.
They're going to have AB redundancy.
Okay.
They're going to have the large battery cabinets.
Okay.
And that one piece of equipment might be taking 100 kilowatts of energy.
Wow.
In order to run. So you may have 250 kilowatt systems running AB with an automatic transfer switch that would go back to some sort of generator system, because it's vitally important that that thing be able to run at all times.
And complete the process of what it's doing.
Yeah. A shutdown within 60 seconds would ruin that piece of equipment.
Holy cow. Okay.
So there are those kinds of things that occur throughout the organization in the mines.
Interesting.
So we sell and service a lot of UPS equipment in these mining areas.
Sure.
Everything from the elevator lifts to the belt to the furnaces, so on and so forth.
Okay.
Lots of stuff gets serviced there.
Interesting.
And mining is one of the most highly regulated and dangerous environments in the United States for people to work in. Therefore, the 𝘾𝙝 is absolute must.
Right. And it's important that we're keeping up with that, ensuring that we are able to meet to their requirements.
So
that
gives you a little background
that is interesting.
That I had heard from our salesperson who works
understanding. It's amazing. We're running out of time here, but it's amazing all the different industries that Gruber Power Services operates within. Like, you get, when I first started here 10 years ago, you have this tunnel vision of where you think and where you believe that the units will need to be working within.
Yeah.
But it's so much more.
Yeah, you're not
than
wrong.
What you think it is.
Yeah. What you're thinking of is right, but
absolutely,
there's so much more.
Yeah, there's so much more that you can expand on in the different areas and sectors and industries that we work with in.
Definitely.
We'll have to dive more into that topic on another podcast.
That'd be a fun one.
Yeah, exactly. To explore the different areas for sure. All right. Well, Mark, you have been a wonderful wealth of knowledge today, helping explain, whenever anybody goes to our website and sees all those licenses and why do we have them? Why is it important? How does it apply to what we're doing and how we're operating on an everyday, day-to-day basis? So that's awesome. Thank you.
Well,
I appreciate that.
Glad I was able to come in and pinch it for Nicole this week.
He's not only our CFO, he's also our regular wealth of knowledge that we go to for many different things around here. Many different areas and many different capacities that you help out. So
thank you.
Anyways, guys, thank you for tuning in. Please watch next week. It will be interesting. We are going to combine the 𝘾𝙗 and GPS podcasts. So we're going to have a little trivia going on.
Oh, that's going to be interesting.
They're going to quiz us on the 𝘾𝙗 website. I should have a little bit of a leg up since I've been exploring that division quite a bit lately.
I would hope so.
I'm hoping I do. And then we're going to quiz them on the power services side of things. So we'll have a little back and forth going on, discussing the two different divisions. And
good stuff.
So that should be fun. Anyways, thank you for watching and have a wonderful day. Thank you again, Mark. I appreciate it.
You bet. And take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.